Welcome to the Uplifters podcast, where every week we get to hear from inspiring midlife women and learn from them so that we can all do bigger and braver things in midlife and beyond. This week, I'm talking to Angela Burk. She's an award winning marketing leader who spent 3 decades scaling companies from scrappy startups to Fortune 500 giants before doing something her 20-year-old self probably would have thought was insane. She left the C-suite. She left the corporate ladder. And just like so many of my clients have done, she decided to pursue something with more meaning, more purpose, and a whole new level of learning and impact. She is the author of the best-selling book, Real Girl's Guide to Midlife, and the voice behind a thriving community that's reshaping how women step into this phase of life with what she calls radical self-possession. In our conversation, we're going to dig into what that actually means, how we shed the stories that no longer serve us. I said to a client this morning that I think the biggest mistake I watch women make is holding on with little tiny talons to pieces of their history for comfort instead of letting that shit go and be somebody else's to manage. Also, we're going to talk about some of the stories we have been fed about what's possible in midlife and what the potential actually is and what it takes to take up the space that we have earned through all of our giving and all of our living and all of our caregiving for others, and the courage it takes to rewrite the rules for ourselves when maybe everybody else expects you to stay on that ladder that you started climbing. So, Angela, thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for writing this incredible book.
Well, thank you for having me. The idea for the book is actually one that I had when I was in my mid 30s. So I was struggling with a lot of transitions. I was a mom of two in a marriage that I was pretty sure was not going to go the distance, at a career turning point. My appearance was starting to change subtly, nothing drastic, but subtly. And I didn't know that even my hormones were starting to change. And I was just confused. And I was looking around and everybody seemed to have their shit together. And I thought, it must be me. I'm the crazy one. This is all in my head. So I started writing down questions and confusion. And I knew that I had a story to tell. I wanted to hear what other women were thinking and experiencing. And I wanted to hear from experts. So I put the book together in a red folder that then literally and figuratively got buried for 20 years. And I found the folder in December of 24. And I opened it and I was like, well, look at that. Turns out I still have a lot of the same questions and struggles. I have a whole host of new ones, a lot of life that I lived in that 20-year period. So I think I can write this book. And that's what I did.
Wow. And did you see yourself as an author at that point?
No, not at all. I gave myself 3 months. So I found the folder in December of 24. And then I needed to kind of talk myself in and out of this process because, like a lot of the stories that we are told, like a lot of the stories that I internalized about who I was and my worth and my capability, I asked myself questions like, can I write this book? Should I write this book? Who the hell do I think I am to think I could write a book? But the good news was that during that period, what I had spent really decades agonizing over, those same stories and patterns in almost every aspect of my life, it took me very little time to change the question, which was, why me? Like, why, who am I to think, to why the hell not me?
Yeah.
And so I just started writing and I had no plan. I loosely kind of knew what I wanted to write about. So I didn't, but I got quickly to an answer that said, I'm not. Who the hell am I to think I could be? 2, why the hell not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hear in that a question that a lot of us ask ourselves in midlife, that we realize that we've been putting limitations on our self-perception. And there's been a significant amount of research that shows that in midlife, our self-perception really takes shape.
Mm.
And that sense of self is why so many women relate to the no fucks left to give mentality, to see ourselves as a person who doesn't know it all, who is flawed, who makes mistakes, alongside the person who has a lot to offer
Mm.
and is able to withstand the not knowing and the discovery. I hear so much of that echoed in your story. Now, at what point did you leave your corporate career? And like, what were you thinking as you said, I'm done?
So I left my corporate career in December of 24, and I
Okay.
had the
This is all
luxury.
happening at once.
It's all happening at once. And this is the thing that I think is very fascinating. So, as women, I think a lot, we're not blessed with the benefit of one transition at a time. A lot of these things are sort of a big storm and confluence of a lot of transitions and changes and opportunities and fears and doubts all swirling together at one time. So if I go back to December of 24, my partner who lives in Australia, which is crazy enough, I don't, I live in California. He sold his business and he said to me, guess what? You get to retire. And I kind of had to think about that because it was going to mean a shift in how I had perceived myself for many, many decades. It was going to be a shift in the teamwork and the partnership that we had spent a decade kind of crafting. But then I quickly got to, thank you, yes, I will do that. And so what happened was I retired in December of 24. I found this folder. So the book idea that I had lived in a red folder, and I was cleaning out like literally cleaning off my desk. I had a little tiny pile, not a big one, but a pile that had been sitting there for, I don't know, like through how many different moves and jobs and whatever. So I started to go through the pile and I found the folder. And so I thought, okay, I could do this. And then I was reaching out to a couple of past colleagues and they were like, hey, you should start advising and consulting because turns out I actually know a lot of shit in all of the marketing jobs I had. And despite the stories that I let other people tell about me, like such as you're an execution machine, you're not strategic enough, you aren't visible enough to the right executives. It's like, cool, I am an execution machine. I am highly strategic. And the reason why I'm not visible is because my shit is always clean. So, I realized that I knew a lot. So I was putting myself out into the world and I began consulting and advising within a month of my retirement. And it was like nothing big and I didn't need to, but I found myself having conversations about subjects that maybe were not my domain, but turns out I knew a lot and people wanted to know what I knew. So I kind of like had this confidence moment, which was I get to decide who I work with, when I work, how I work, and the things that I work on, all while this book idea was sort of percolating. It really was this confluence. And then, if I look at my personal life, I had two of my three boys who were out in the world. Together, my man and I have a staggering number of children. We have 7 children. So a lot of things were changing for, the kids who range in age from 15 to 30. And then I was like, cool, well, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to do consulting and I'm going to write this book and I'm going to start a Substack. And again, for me, it changed the question from why me? Can I? Should I? Who do I think I am? To why the hell not?
You were offered this opportunity to have an exit.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you in the lead up to that? Were you like, oh, I am meant for something more?
Yeah.
I am done and bored.
Well, and it's funny that you asked me that because where I was into the lead up of that was if I rewind the clock back about 3 years prior to December of 24, I took on a very challenging role at my company. And it was a domain that I had spent 0 time in my career. So I took on this role and I knew it was going to be really, really hard. I had no idea how hard it was going to be. But I lived through a 3-year period that was incredibly difficult. I was learning a new domain. I was learning a new domain inside of a system that had some breaks. And so my team of what became 32 people, other teams inside this business had to come together and start breaking apart processes and systems because we knew that there were issues. And then we had to rebuild. So it was a really trying time. It was probably the time in my career where I felt the most imposter syndrome. If I'm honest with you, I'd be sitting in these meetings going, what are you all even talking about? Like, I don't even understand what you guys are talking about, but I figured it out. And I did, and I leaned into all the things that I knew to be true about myself, and I did the work, but it was exhausting. So as I'm kind of going through this 3-year period in my head, I was like, I do not have this in me. And so I mentally knew I wanted to get that team, the set of problems that I was tasked with, to a place of solution and where everything was like trending green, everything was good. And I knew that I was going to be making a change. I didn't know what it was going to look like, But I knew I could not keep that pace anymore. I didn't want to. I knew that the stories that I had let others tell about me in a professional setting, that then became the stories I believed about myself for a long time, were patently false. And I knew that in whatever was going to come next, again, during that time, I didn't know exactly what was going to come next, but I knew whatever was going to come next was going to be on my terms. And so I had that mindset shift. It's not like it hit me all at once. It wasn't a light bulb moment, but it was these signals. And when I slowed down and I started to pause and look at them, they became very clear.
Yeah, I think that's the key for so many of us. On that hamster wheel, you just keep going and saying yes and figuring it out and being resourceful and managing whatever comes at you. But the second you have a moment to step back, it's like, number one, I'm exhausted. Number two, what am I even doing on this wheel?
Yeah.
Is this the only way or is there
Yeah.
another path?
That's exactly right. And then in working on the book, so not only is the book filled with my stories, but it's filled with stories of other women at various decades, right? Women in their 30s and 40s, women in their 50s like me, 60s, 70s, and even a woman in her 80s, which is one of my favorite stories in the book. This period of transition, right? And you can call it midlife. Midlife is not a magic decade. It's not a 5-year period. It doesn't look the same for each of us, but it is kind of a reclamation, right? Where all of a sudden you stop. And the signs for me and for a lot of the women that I talked to were there. Your life doesn't feel like your own anymore. For me, it was, I didn't always recognize myself in the parts of my life that I was living. And I felt like I was the parts of me that really were the ones that made me me. And I spent so many decades sort of editing those parts out, being small, trying to be the peacekeeper. I had the metaphorical clipboard for everybody around me, whether that was at work, whether that was at home, whether that was in my personal relationships, my friend group, like wherever it was. And I started to see that the best parts of me were being edited out. And then I didn't even recognize myself. And I see that play out so many times for so many women. And again, it's not like, for many of us, it's not like these big light bulb moments, but it's if you just quiet the noise and you just observe, the signs are very present.
What parts of yourself did you feel like you were hiding?
I think some of the parts where I began to internalize a story that somehow I just wasn't enough, that me as my person, whatever I brought to any metaphorical or physical table wasn't sufficient. I would feel guilty for saying no, right? My ability to say no would be, oh my gosh, let me apologize and give you all the reasons why I can't do the thing you're asking me to do. So I would say no with an essay or a dissertation. And that felt disingenuous to me. I also believed that my sole job was to exist to make everybody around me comfortable, to make them feel safe, to make the load less for them without realizing then I was taking on the load. And at work, I think I started to mistake kind of competency and capability became my currency. I sort of relied on that and then suffered in the process. And I didn't even realize it was happening. And I think if I look at an example of how that played out, a really good one is even in my marriage, right? So I sort of white knuckled my way through my 30s and 40s. The hormones were changing. Again, I didn't have language. I didn't know what was happening. I just was like, everything feels like it's just in turmoil. Then had a realization with my ex-husband. We decided to divorce. But even in the lead up to that, I somehow told myself this story that my kids deserved an intact family more than they deserved a happy Angela. And I don't even think my boys really knew me until we made the decision to separate. But I told myself a lot of these stories. And then I just internalized the ones that other people told about me. And then I just didn't even recognize my own self anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was like, who am I in
Who
all
am
of
I?
this?
Yeah. Who I, yeah. And I think, when you look at the stories that I share in the book and what so many other women shared, and even the experts kind of created these threads through, a lot of these things have been modeled for us, right? Like somehow we're modeled to, and maybe rewarded, either internally rewarded or externally rewarded, to keep the peace, to shrink, to be the even keeled, the ones who don't cause grief, the ones who kind of keep everything smooth and steady. And I think for me, that got rooted into things like, my happiness doesn't matter.
Mm,
My desires don't matter. And by putting myself first on the list, everybody else is going to suffer. So how the hell am I supposed to do that?
right. Right. And so you're seeing all of what it costs you to meet this need and not paying attention to all it's costing you to not meet it.
Correct. Correct. And I think too, a lot of us, for me, I'm a planner. And I think for a lot of things in my life, I sort of felt like I needed to have the perfect plan. And I needed to have
Mhm.
every possible scenario like built and torn apart, risks, all the things, right? Like I had to marinate in the gutter of worst case scenario on everything. And in reality, I just needed to start.
Yeah.
The perfect plan doesn't exist, right? But just the decision, hey, this thing is not working for me. I don't like myself or how I feel in this thing. I'm going to make one small change. I don't have to
Yeah.
have the perfect plan, but I just have to do, or I just have to begin. And that was really scary too, and I heard that echoed in a lot of the women that I spoke to for the book. But the reality is you just have to start.
Absolutely. That's it. I call it the
Yeah.
2% principle. Like, do the
Yeah.
tiniest version of this,
Yeah.
the least scary, but the most active.
Right.
You talk a lot about telling the stories that nobody was telling
Mm.
and being honest about some of the lies we've been fed. So, what is it that we aren't saying that you feel like we all need to hear again and again?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very good question. I think for me, the starting point is, the need to rewrite some of these stories, right? And whether those stories are about aging, worth, desirability, ambition, all of it. And those old scripts are different for each of us. And they run deeper or less deep depending on who we are, whether it's our satisfaction in the bedroom, the career aspirations we have, our appearance, our relationships. It's so different for each of us. And for me, those stories were rooted in these principles. Number one, that my happiness needed to come last. Because if my happiness came first, other people would be suffering. How can I be the cause of somebody else's suffering? And that fundamental belief became the narration of a lot of the ways I viewed my life and the decisions that I made. That I was wrong for wanting more, whether that was in the bedroom, at work, a relationship, whatever. I was wrong for wanting more. And I think that the hardest one for me. And so I found through connecting with so many women that the fundamental premise in those stories starts with these talk tracks. I shouldn't do this. And who am I to think I can do this? And who am I to want something more? And really the thought process needs to be inverted to why the hell not? Why the hell not me? Why the hell shouldn't I want more? And it's a hard shift to make, but it is a powerful one.
Those questions give us so much great data about where we're getting in our own way. And oftentimes the answer to your point is just entirely flip them around. So, you have been through so much change over the course of really
Mm.
a short time. What does radical self possession look like in your daily practices?
Some of the biggest shifts have come in the way I show up for myself and other people around me. I'll give you a couple of examples that I don't think are dramatic, but have been absolutely astoundingly beneficial to me. So
That's
the
kind.
idea of saying no, okay? Right? That for decades of my life. I didn't think I could say no. I didn't think I should say no. I didn't know how to say no. And I thought that in doing that, I needed to apologize and I owed people explanations and I justification and I was going to get graded on it, whether it was right enough or wrong enough or whatever. And so the shift became, guess what? No is a full sentence. And if no doesn't feel good, here's 3 words. I'm not available. That's 3 words. If something comes up as an example and how I kind of got to that point was I found myself saying yes to things that I actually wanted to say no to. And I was like, why am I saying yes to this thing, this project? Why am I in an argument with a friend when I know that I don't believe it?
Mm.
So I had to pay attention. And then it was like, okay, cool. If no doesn't feel like no is a full sentence, but if that feels a little bit difficult, I'm not available. I don't agree. So that's one way. The other one, which was a really big one for me, asking for rest. The idea of saying, I'm exhausted. I can't do it. I need to stop. That felt for so long like a sign of weakness. And in that, and it wasn't even like, oh, I'm not feeling good, I need to go lie down. Or it was deeper than that. It was the idea that enough was enough. A, I'm enough, and B, I wish I would have said enough in other situations, like stop, enough. But the idea of asking for rest or saying, I'm done, I'm tired, I need a break, it felt so foreign to me. But now the idea of, so it's not like these big dramatic like unlearning and unpacking, but it's being present and recognizing that there are parts of me, things that I need in the moment that I don't owe anybody an explanation for, that I get to claim as my own, that I get to ask for and demand, and nobody, I'm not apologizing for them. How messed up is it? Like if I look at my partner and go, I've been running around like a crazy person, I'm handling everything for the kids, I need help. Why was that so hard for so many decades to just sit down with my partner and go, I need help, I need a break?
My favorite little script that I practice all the time now is, I'll get back to you.
Let's see, I'll get back to you. 5 words.
That's it.
And that's it.
That's it. Yeah.
You don't have to justify it. Not,
No,
well, I'll get
no.
back to you because of all these. No.
Yeah. I'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Right. And you can, and you will. And I don't know why I've been so afraid my entire life of forgetting to follow up on things that I just say yes in the moment, which is a really unhelpful pattern.
Yeah. But you're not the only one.
I know.
You're not the
It's
only
so
one.
true. We're all in this together, and that's why we need books like yours to.
Thank you.
I mean, I think that's where you began. You said, I thought I was broken. And we need stories like this to say, no, this is a thing. It happens. Let's talk about some other ways to manage it so it doesn't have to keep happening.
Absolutely.
So, as we start to wrap up here, every woman who comes on the show nominates a woman who inspires her, who she thinks would inspire us, a woman who is uplifting others and doing really impactful and meaningful work. So, who do you want to nominate?
Well, okay, so I'm going to give you somebody that I actually connected to in the course of my book. She's the oldest real girl in the book. Her name is Diane Heiler, and she is in her 80s, and she wrote her first book in her late 70s. She lost her second husband, and she wrote a book about grieving. She was not a writer, and she wrote this book. And so I had the good fortune of connecting with her as I was writing my book. Her book is called A Widow's Fire. Please support her. Go get it on Amazon. It is an amazing book. And she wrote about grief in such a touching and raw way. Also, through the course of writing about grief, she also got into poetry. Again, so we're talking a woman in her 80s, tapping into these amazing gifts that were probably always there, but now she's letting them flourish. But one of the last things I asked her was something to the effect of, what's been the most surprising thing about finding love in your 80s? And she said, I'm paraphrasing, that the parts still work and I like it. And I decided, like, that is, I want to live like Diane. I do not want to be embarrassed, ashamed, editing, softening my view on desire and pleasure. I am a little bit obsessed with her.
Same. I was raised with my grandmother, who we lost last year. She was 95, and she would never have talked about sex, but she had her own level of badassery in that up until her last days, she was running and doing headstands and literally throwing her legs up over her head in the hospital bed. And the last thing she did standing was hula hoop. So she deeply, wildly playful. I have hundreds of videos of her just like breaking into dance with people and as she called it, getting low.
Get Low is one of my favorite songs. It's wildly inappropriate,
it's like
but
a real
like
similar energy. I wish.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. I've got the visual.
I totally want to meet her and read her book. So you said so beautifully and powerfully, like, go read the book, support her. As uplifters, we live to amplify and celebrate and support uplifters. So one of the things I ask every guest to do is make an ask of the community, because I think that's another thing we're told not to do, is to ask for our needs to be met, to everything you've said. So this is your invitation, your moment. We want it. Tell us what you want from us. How can we support you in your work?
Yes. So one thing I'd like everybody to do. So one of the things in the book I end with is a manifesto. And it's a very simple personal contract that we make with ourselves. So what I'd first like everybody to do is think of one thing you want to lose, you want to let go of, one thing you want to reclaim, and one small way you're going to make a change starting today, and use that as your personal contract. That's it.
Okay.
And it could be as simple as, I'm not going to say yes to everything. I'm going to learn to say no, or I'll get back to you. And this week, I'm going to practice saying it to my partner, my boss, my kid, my girlfriend. One time you're going to practice it. So that's one ask I have. And then ways to support me would be to buy my book. It's Real Girl's Guide to Midlife, available on Amazon, bookshop.org, all the places that you love to buy books. Check out my Substack, which is Real Girl's Guide to Midlife. Dig in, share what's resonating, what you love, what you hate, what's happening for you, and then follow me on the socials, because I am new to the socials. I am mega cringy. You can find some really cringy reels on Instagram if you just want to laugh at my awkwardness, because that would be fun. And yeah, just dig in and share. So we're not alone. We're not alone. We're not crazy. All this stuff is not in our head, and it takes a village.
It really does. And I think part of what I'm hearing in there is like, be an active participant. I mean, certainly just like following somebody is great, but comment,
Dig
like,
in.
engage, because
Yeah.
that's part of how we don't feel alone in all of this
Yes.
is people just actively showing up. And I know we all only have so much time and energy to put into that stuff, but if you're there, let
If
it be
you're
an
there,
active moment.
absolutely. Does it resonate? If you go, actually, I don't agree, or hey, this is what
Right.
worked for me.
Yeah.
Please, we
Yeah.
don't gatekeep. We cannot gatekeep anything, the good, the bad, the ugly. And so that's a really important ask. So I'm so glad you raised that.
It was really nice to meet you, Angela. Thank you for writing this book. I can't wait to read it. Thank you for your nomination. I'm so glad to be following your Substack and to keep reading your work there and on socials.
Thank you.
And for those of you listening, go and do all the things. And then, as always, let us know who you want to hear more from, what you want to learn about. You'll find me also on Substack for the most part. And, very cringy over on Instagram. I don't know what I'm doing there, but I just keep trying.
I love it.
Thanks for watching the Uplifters podcast. If this inspired you, hit subscribe and tap the bell to stay uplifted. Give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs a little lift today. Big love.
Painted water sunshine with rosemary and thyme. Dwell in the perplexing, though you find it vexing. Toss a star and hover, be your own best lover. Relish in a new prime, plant a tree in springtime. Dance with idle hindsight, bring the sun to twilight.